Some players dominated, some barely got the chance, but all of them had one thing in common: their careers were changed, shortened, or shattered by injuries. And while we saw glimpses of greatness, fans have always asked the same question: what if? When Andrew Luck, he was supposed to be the next great one. Andrew Luck had it all: intelligence, mobility, leadership, arm strength. Drafted first overall in 2012, he was handed the impossible task of replacing Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. And somehow, he delivered. Luck took the Colts to the playoffs in each of his first 3 seasons. He led the league in touchdown passes in 2014. He carried bad rosters behind worse offensive lines and kept getting up after brutal hits. But the damage added up. A torn labrum in his throwing shoulder, ribs, a lacerated kidney, a lingering calf issue. Months turned into years of pain, rehab, and doubt. And then, in 2019, just 2 weeks before the season opener, he shocked the football world. He retired at 29. He said the cycle of injury and recovery had drained the joy from the game. Just like that, a franchise quarterback in his prime was gone. Fans respected the decision, but they've never stopped wondering what might have been. If his body had held up, how many rings could he have won? 2. Bo Jackson. Bo wasn't just a player, he was a phenomenon, a myth in motion. He played Major League Baseball and the NFL at the same time. On Sundays, he was a running back for the Los Angeles Raiders, a 230-pound rocket with Olympic speed. He didn't just run past defenders, he ran through them. Ask Brian Bosworth, ask the Bengals' entire defense. But Bo's legend ended too soon. In a 1991 playoff game against the Bengals, Bo took a routine run down the sideline. He was tackled from behind. His hip popped out of place. At first, it didn't seem career-ending, but the injury damaged blood vessels and led to a degenerative condition called a vascular necrosis. His NFL career was over at 28. He tried to return to baseball, even hit a few home runs, but he was never the same. Bo Jackson only played 38 NFL games, but in that short span, he averaged 5.4 yards per carry and gave us some of the most jaw-dropping plays ever recorded. He's the ultimate what if, a superstar whose story ended just as it was taking off. 3. Bob Sanders. They called him the Hitman, and it wasn't just a nickname. Bob Sanders was a force of nature in the Colts secondary, undersized at 5 feet 8 inches, but fearless and explosive. He played with a kind of controlled violence that changed games. When Sanders was healthy, Indianapolis had a defense to match Peyton Manning's offense, and in 2007, he put it all together. He was named NFL Defensive Player of the Year, rare for a safety, and helped lead the Colts to a Super Bowl 41 title. But the hits caught up with him. Injuries wrecked his career: shoulder problems, knee injuries, biceps tears. He only played more than 6 games in 2 seasons out of 8. His body couldn't handle the style he played with. Fast, physical, all in. By the time he retired, Sanders had only appeared in 50 regular season games. But when he was out there, everyone noticed. He made a short career unforgettable. 4. Mark Bavaro. If you wanted a tight end who blocked like a lineman and played like a linebacker, you wanted Mark Bavaro. He was the definition of old school toughness. No trash talk, no celebrations, just grit. Bavaro became a key piece of the New York Giants in the 1980s, helping them win 2 Super Bowls. He made the Pro Bowl in 1986 and 1987, catching passes over the middle and dragging defenders with him, one of his most iconic plays. A Monday Night Football catch against the 49ers where he carried multiple defenders for 20 yards. But Bavaro played through pain that most couldn't tolerate. His knees were shot, he had multiple surgeries. There were seasons where he could barely practice, only showing up on Sundays, taped and braced like a machine. Injuries eventually took their toll. He retired at just 31, his prime shortened by the physical toll of his position. But ask any Giants fan or any linebacker from that era, and they'll tell you Bavaro was one of the toughest men to ever play the game. 5. Jason Sehorn. Before the injuries, Jason Sehorn looked like the future of the position. He was fast, physical, instinctive, and one of the very few white cornerbacks of the modern era. In the late 90s, he was one of the best athletes on the Giants defense, a dangerous return man, and a true lockdown DB. Then came the 1998 preseason. Returning a kickoff, Sehorn tore his ACL and MCL in one violent plant and cut motion. He was never the same. He came back and continued to start, but the explosion was gone. gone. The elite speed that made him special just didn't return. Sehorn still had a solid career, but the player fans saw before the injury, that version could have been a Pro Bowler for years. Instead, we got a cautionary tale of how quickly speed and promise can vanish. 6th, Odell Beckham Jr. He had one of the most iconic catches in NFL history before he even had 10 career games. Odell Beckham Jr. didn't just arrive, he exploded. As a rookie with the Giants in 2014, he posted over 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns in only 12 games. He was electric, one-handed catches, breakaway speed, highlight after highlight. He made the Pro Bowl in each of his first 3 seasons. But the injuries came quickly. Ankle fractures, hamstring pulls, core muscle surgeries, and eventually a torn ACL. OBJ's 2021 season with the Rams looked like redemption. In Super Bowl 56, he caught the game's first touchdown and was on his way to an MVP-level performance until his knee buckled. Another torn ACL, he got his ring, but fans know the prime OBJ, the one who made corners look silly, didn't last as long as it should have. 7. Sterling Sharpe. Some careers end quietly. Sterling Sharpe's ended at full speed. In the early 90s, he was one of the NFL's most dominant wide receivers. 3-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler, and Brett Favre's favorite target. In 1992, he led the league in receptions, yards, and touchdowns, the rare receiving Triple Crown. But in 1994, a neck injury changed everything. Doctors found a condition that put him at serious risk for paralysis. Sharpe had to walk away immediately at just 29 years old. He finished his career with over 8,000 yards and 65 touchdowns in just 7 seasons. Hall of Fame voters have debated him ever since. But fans know, if Sterling had stayed healthy, his numbers would have shattered records. His brother Shannon may have made Canton, but Sterling, he was better. And that's coming from Shannon himself. 8. Terrell Davis. Some players build greatness over a decade. Terrell Davis needed less than 5 years. A 6th-round pick out of Georgia, Davis was never supposed to be a star, but in Denver, he became the heart of a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He rushed for over 1,700 yards in back-to-back seasons and topped it off with 2,008 yards in 1998. That year, he was named league MVP. In the playoffs, even better. Davis averaged over 142 rushing yards per postseason game, the highest in NFL history. But then, the knees gave out. In 1999, Davis tore his ACL and MCL while trying to make a tackle after an interception. The damage lingered. He was never the same, playing just 17 more games before retiring at 29. He still made the Hall of Fame, but had his body held up, Davis might have been the greatest postseason running back ever, over a full career instead of a legendary sprint. 9. Brandon Jacobs. He looked like a defensive end playing running back. 6 feet 4 inches, 264 pounds, built like a tank. Brandon Jacobs was a bulldozer in cleats, and when he got going, good luck stopping him. Jacobs was a key piece of 2 Super Bowl winning Giants teams. He wasn't a finesse runner. He wore defenses down. He had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons and scored 15 touchdowns in 2008. But behind the power was a fragile frame. Knee injuries chipped away at his explosiveness. Hamstring issues and wear and tear slowed him down earlier than expected. The Giants leaned on him in high-leverage moments, but the hits added up fast. By 2011, Jacobs was splitting carries, and by 2013, he was out of the league. At his peak, he was one of the most intimidating runners in football, but that prime window, it closed too quickly. 10. Priest Holmes. Few players have ever gone from nobody to unstoppable the way Priest Holmes did. Undrafted, underrated, undeniable. Holmes exploded with the Kansas City Chiefs in the early 2000s. In 2002, he rushed for over 1,600 yards and 21 touchdowns, then followed it up in 2003 with 27 rushing touchdowns, a then record. He had power, patience, and an eye for the goal line like nobody else. From 2001 to 2003, no one in the NFL was more productive. He wasn't just good, he was dominant. And then the injuries struck. In 2004, a spinal injury cut his season short. In 2005, he suffered head and neck trauma that eventually led to his retirement. He briefly attempted a comeback in 2007, but lasted just 4 games. Holmes went from league MVP candidate to done in a heartbeat, but in his prime, time, he was the most dangerous man on the field. 11. Joe Theismann. Monday Night Football, November 18th, 1985. One moment Joe Theismann was under center. The next, his career was over. Theismann was no journeyman. He was a Pro Bowler, a Super Bowl champion, and an MVP finalist. He'd led Washington to a title just 2 seasons earlier and had become one of the faces of the league. But that night, during a trick play gone wrong, Lawrence Taylor sacked Theismann and snapped his leg in two. The sound was audible, the visual unforgettable. It became one of the most replayed injuries in sports history. He never played again. Theismann's career didn't fade. It stopped instantly, and while he found success in broadcasting afterward, fans will always remember a quarterback who had more left. Never got the chance to show it. 12. Joe Namath. He walked with a swagger. He talked like a star before he became one. Joe Namath guaranteed a Super Bowl victory and then delivered it. But what most people forget, Namath did it all on one good leg. Even in college, Namath's knees were a problem. By the time he got to the pros, they were already worn down. In 1965, he signed with the New York Jets and quickly became one of the most exciting quarterbacks in football, a gunslinger with flair and deep ball accuracy. But chronic knee injuries plagued his entire career. Surgeries, swelling, braces. Namath played in pain, game after game. His stats suffered, his mobility disappeared, and his peak didn't last long. Still, he won Super Bowl III. Still, he made history. But with healthy knees, Broadway Joe could have been more than a legend. He might have been the best. 13. Patrick Willis. There was a time when Patrick Willis was the most feared linebacker in the NFL. 7 Pro Bowls in 8 seasons. 5-time All-Pro. Leader of the 49ers defense during their dominant early 2000s run. He was everywhere. Sideline to sideline, shot out of a cannon, reading plays before they happened. And then he left. Willis retired in 2015 at just 30 years old, citing chronic foot issues. Fans were stunned. He still looked elite, but the pain was real, and he chose long-term health over short-term glory. In just 8 seasons, he racked up over 950 tackles, 20.5 sacks, and a legacy built on toughness and intelligence. He didn't wait for his skills to fade. He walked away while still on top. It wasn't a decline, it was a sudden silence. 14. Luke Kuechly. Smart, fast, relentless. Luke Kuechly was a coach's dream and a quarterback's nightmare. From the moment he entered the league in 2012, Kuechly made an impact. He led the NFL in tackles as a rookie. In year 2, he was named Defensive Player of the Year. He anchored the Panthers' defense all the way to a Super Bowl appearance in 2015. He was everywhere, diagnosing plays in real time, calling out audibles, making impossible tackles look routine. But behind that brilliance was a brutal cost. Concussions, multiple serious ones, each one harder to watch than the last. Kuechly played through pain, but eventually the risk outweighed the reward. In 2020, at just 28 years old, he retired. Fans respected the decision, but it still hurts. Because Kuechly wasn't just great, he was headed for all-time status. Injuries don't care about greatness. They don't care about talent, work ethic, or destiny. These players had the skills, they had the drive, but their stories were cut short, not by opponents, but by bodies that couldn't hold up. We'll never know how far they could have gone, but in the hearts of fans, they still made an impact that lasts forever.